Creepy Battenberg.
Do you believe in ghosts, haunted houses, poltergeists, residual energy, demons? Whether you believe in them or not, the myth of ghosts has endured down the centuries. Theologians, philosophers, and scientists have all come up with their own theories. Spirits of the deceased, memories trapped like recordings in a building's fabric, the imaginings of a fertile mind, or sheer nonsense. Tonight, I am going to start with the story of a very good friend who I know would not make this up. Whether you choose to accept his account or not, I suggest you turn down the lights, get comfortable, and lose yourself in his ghost story. A few years ago, I lived in a small town in Northumberland called Bedlington, where I resided in a very old townhouse. You had to go through an archway down a side street to a shared courtyard, and my door was to the right of the entrance. It was full of character, and records would show that it was built in the early 1800s. Despite the damp problems, and the place being constantly cold, I called it my home, and I had many happy times there. Within my first year living there, I noticed things just weren't quite right. There were sudden drastic changes from cold to colder, as if someone had opened a window on an icy day. It would cause me to get up and check that all the windows and doors were shut. They were always shut. All through the night, the place made noises, creaking floorboards and the occasional scraping sound. These were things I just put down to the house being old. It was the type of place you could let your imagination run wild in. But what I'm about to tell you were not imaginings. They were very true and very strange happenings. Within time, my partner Lottie moved into the house, and straight away she could feel a presence, although described it as not being malevolent. Things started to get even more creepy. Things would be moved. The TV would change channels, all on its own. One night, Lottie was out, and I decided to watch the Japanese version of The Grudge. I heard a loud bang, and saw that my two wheelie bins had been knocked over and were moving around the yard as if they were being dragged. I went out and secured them in the corner with some bricks. But apart from the usual noises, things moving, and both of us waking at 3 AM most mornings, we were quite settled, until this one night. We had just came in from a good night out, and there was a tall uplighter lamp we had that started to buzz and flicker. I thought at the time that it would be funny to try and scare Lottie. I loudly asked, "Is there anybody here? If you are, please flash the lamp 3 times. It did, right on cue. That was obviously a fluke, right? So I asked again, but this time asked it to flash the lamp 2 times. The lamp duly obliged. By now, Lottie was a little scared and asked me to stop. I will admit that by this time, I thought I had taken my stunt too far. We quickly got ourselves into bed before laughing it all off. It wasn't long after that when I started working nights over the Christmas period. During one of these nights, we had some heavy snow, the kind you don't really get anymore, that's at least a foot deep. I walked home through the woods, up the street, and through the arch into my backyard. I opened the door, careful not to let any of the snow fall inside. I tapped my boots together to knock the snow off them, and I started to wash the dishes, when I looked up to see the figure of a person walk past my kitchen window. I thought it might have been my neighbour Skippy. He would often pass by early in the morning, and we would share a cigarette and a cup of tea. I opened my door to see if I could catch him, but was puzzled to see that no one was there. Even more puzzling was that the only footprints in the snow were my own. That very morning, I went and knocked on my landlady's door. I asked her if there had ever been a complaint about a ghost, or had other residents reported strange happenings. She asked me if I had finally seen the shadow walker, as previous tenants of hers had done. They had reported seeing someone walk past their windows facing the courtyard. Some even reported seeing the figure walk the length of the yard before disappearing into a corner with walls too high to climb. I only lived in that house for 3 years, and strangely, after seeing the shadow walker, the strange things stopped happening. The place seemed to warm up, and the lights and electricity behaved. Some of the things could be put down to faulty wiring in a creepy old house. But what about the lights flickering on cue and following the instructions given? What about the fact that other people that I had never met described very similar things? It's very unlikely that this haunting can be explained away. And as Charles Fort noted, explaining a thing away is not the same as explaining a thing. It was several years back now, when I lived in a house in Guidepost, Northumberland. It was a nice location, near the woods and the River Wansbeck. I lived there with my husband and my 2 daughters. When I lived there, I would often wake up at 3 a.m. One morning, I woke up at 3 as usual and heard the noise of horses' hooves. I got out of bed and cracked open the blinds to look out the window. I couldn't believe what I saw. Passing by my window was what I could only describe as a Victorian-style horse and carriage being driven by men wearing very old-fashioned clothing, probably 19th century. I really didn't know what to think of it. I just knew that it wasn't normal for a Victorian horse-drawn carriage to pass your window at 3 in the morning. This was to be the first of many strange things I saw when living there. Like I say, it would often be 3 in the morning when I awoke through the night. I had a feeling I should look out the window again. This time I looked out towards the neighbour's house. It was down the street, and I saw people carrying a coffin down their driveway. A funeral? At 3 in the morning? That is so strange. I did a double take, and it was definitely people carrying a coffin. What's more, there were mourners standing with heads bowed, some of them holding their hats. As unusual as this was, I reserved judgment. Who knows? Perhaps the person who died had requested previously that their funeral take place in the middle of the night. When I next saw the neighbours, I made sure to tell them that I was sorry for their loss. They looked puzzled when I told them. There had been no funeral. The last thing that happened was probably the strangest, and definitely the most upsetting of all. It happened one night when I was busy in my daughter's bedroom. Her bedroom overlooked the garden, and at the back of the garden was a large tree. I had the feeling that I needed to look out of the window. I looked out into the garden, and there, standing under the tree, was a monk, hooded and cloaked. I was terrified. Too terrified to go out and investigate, but thankfully he was gone by the time I had the courage to look again. He was back again the night after, standing in exactly the same place. He was there a 3rd night also. I think that the monk appeared there as a warning to me. I say this because the day after I saw him on that 3rd night, there was a terrible tragedy in the family. I never saw him again after that. It's now been a long time since I lived in that house, but it's impossible to forget what I saw when I was there. I sometimes wonder if the people that live there now have seen anything when they look out their window at 3 a.m. Hello again, people. It's Creepy here, and I hope you've enjoyed tonight's episode. I just wanted to add a little bit of a footnote. The area in which the lady lived in the second story was only a stone's throw from a place called Sheepwash. In the photo used in this story, a small housing area was built to the right of the river in the 1990s, and when they were digging the foundations, there was a burial ground of monks found. Records show an ancient monastery nearby, which has long since crumbled without a trace, and a tunnel was found as well, running from Sheepwash to nearby Bothell village to a church that has been in use for over 1,000 years. The other thing that I've noticed in the stories that people have submitted to me is that a lot of these ghost sightings seem to happen at about 3 o'clock in the morning. I don't know the significance of that, but there's obviously some kind of connection, and that's obviously reflected in the title for the second story. And if you're a fan of The Exorcism of Emily Rose, you'll probably quite enjoy that as well. If you've seen the film, you'll know what I mean. Lastly, I just want to say a big thank you to Sci-Fi Nightmares for providing the artwork for the Shadow Walker, and also thank you to him for just doing everything he can to promote and support Creepy Battenberg and Scary True Tales. He's absolutely my biggest fan, and I really can't thank him enough. So, until next time, this is Creepy Battenberg saying thank you for watching, and good night.